Yeah, welcome back to KM6LYW Radio, the show about amateur radio or ham radio, reimagining radio in the information age. Hey, today let's talk about ham clocks. Is it a critical ham radio tool or an attractive conversation piece? Let's build one this time on KM6LYW Radio. Yeah. All right, welcome back. Free bumper music. I butchered that one. Okay, let's do it. A ham clock. Let's build one. What is a ham clock? Well, first of all, it's a clock, but it also has a whole bunch of other information that an amateur radio user might want, like solar condition, band conditions, DX spotting, where the sun is, all kinds of cool information. This is all changeable too. In fact, this screen is clickable. So it is a simple DSI screen. Change my call sign color with a Raspberry Pi attached to the back. In this case, this is a really cheap Raspberry Pi 3A Plus. This uses a frame buffer implementation. There's web versions and there's X11 versions, desktop versions, but this one's really simple and it's just kind of a nice appliance that you can leave out on your desk. And we're going to go ahead and build one. There's a lot of history behind the ham clock. And this was written a long time ago. In fact, the current author is a silent key. So people are trying to keep this alive and keep this software going. Not only the old code base, but people are reimagining it, re-implementing it in SDL versions, web versions. This is the old original version that drives on a frame buffer. There's hamclock.com. They're keeping Hamclock alive. So if you've got an existing ham clock and you already know everything about this and you know how this works, all you need to do is get the latest version of Hamclock, which I think is 422, and then put this on the command line -b hamclock.com:80 because the existing data feed, I think it's clear skies dot something, no longer exists. An off-the-shelf Hamclock doesn't work unless you add this command line parameter to point at this site here. And I really wish, let's see, the original author was WB0OEW. I'm looking for I want to thank the person who put this together here. Maybe it was W4BAE. Anyways, thank you for hosting hamclock.com so we can still get our Hamclock feeds. And there are new ham clocks popping up. We've got hamclock.next or hamclock-next here. This is a completely rewrite in SDL, a much more modern, more capable language here. It's pretty close to the original. I think it looks pretty good. So you might consider this if you want to build a ham clock. He's got a frame buffer version here. So hamclock-next is an option. Also, if you just want to give up and use a web browser on a full-blown PC, yeah, you can do that too. We've got openhamclock.com. This one's pretty cool. Maybe this is the future of Hamclock. I don't know. But, it's not as cool as having a little ham clock on your desk. And this requires a whole browser and a complicated desktop environment, which, of course, all that ain't going to run on a Raspberry Pi 3A Plus. So anyways, those are your options. But let's build the retro desktop ham clock here using the original software with some updates. And we're going to make it work with the new data stream. We're going to go through the process of building this. So that involves getting a Raspberry Pi operating system, the Raspberry Pi and the DSI display, installing the Hamclock software, all of the dependencies, and a few tweaks that we have to make to get this really old software working on a brand new Raspberry Pi and brand new Linux operating system here. So we're going to go through the whole process here today. We're going to do it quickly. I'm going to leave all the information in the notes. Patrons of the channel, if you just want to skip to the end, I'm going to put this final image and give it to patrons of patreon.com/KM6LYW. So if you're in a short attention span patron, you can just go get the SD card image and boot it at patreon.com/KM6LYW. We are doing this for like $60. Okay, this is a really cheap Raspberry Pi, the Raspberry Pi Model 3A Plus. It's only got 512 megs of memory, but it has the same processor as the 3B Plus. So really, we don't need a lot of memory. All we're doing is running one application and displaying it on a little DSI screen here. So $25 for a Raspberry Pi Model 3A, and the best part about it is this is available. So $25. You can run any Raspberry Pi. Well, at least developed within the last 15 years. And then the other thing is we want a screen. This is one of the coolest parts here that makes this fun. I've got this DSI display. So this isn't HDMI. This is actually a DSI screen. So what that means is there's this tiny little ribbon cable here, and this is available on 3A plus and what is it on? All of the large format Pi. So you're not going to find this DSI cable on a Raspberry Pi Zero. Okay, so it's got to be like a full size Pi here. That's the DSI cable. This is not HDMI. It's pretty cool. The resolution here is 800 by 480, which is more than sufficient for what we're running here for the Hamclock. You can different sizes here. I don't know if you can see these, but different prices for different sizes. So this is the mid-size one, and I've got a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus on the back of this one. So, you know, another option. Lots of shapes and sizes for your Hamclock. So again, we're talking about $60 for a clock here, and I'm sure you've got a spare SD card. You're going to need one of those. All the cables and all that comes in the box. And let's begin here. You guys can follow along. I'm going to do this quickly, but all the information's down below. You can cut and paste most of this. In fact, I've got a cheat sheet here to build one of these. The first thing I want you to do is go to raspberrypi.com/software/operating-systems. This is where you're going to download the SD card and flash it. Okay, so I want you to download Raspberry Pi OS Lite. Don't get the desktop version. No, that's going to result in tears. This is Lite. This is extremely small operating system. It's just going to run one application. Go ahead and download that SD card image, and you can burn it to an SD card using the Raspberry Pi Imager. There's a link to that from there, raspberrypi.com/software. And I'm gonna assume you know how to do all this stuff. I'm not gonna make you endure this, but the imaging process helps you configure your little image for your Wi-Fi, your login, password, all that stuff. And I'm gonna assume you've got as far as installing Raspberry Pi OS on your Raspberry Pi, and there's a little SD card right there. So this is where we're starting. We're at a login prompt on the DSI screen. It's pre-configured and everything. This is a stock Trixie Raspberry Pi OS Lite 32-bit operating system. You really don't need more than that. In fact, you know, 64-bit, actually you don't even need that if you got more, unless you have more than 4 gigs of RAM. All right, so let's go here. We talked about the hardware. I'm going to have a shell prompt here. Hopefully you guys can see this. So I'm actually on this Raspberry Pi, and I can see it is a Trixie 13.4 version. I don't think this is updated yet, but this is the June release. It was built in June, so June 26th to kind of date this thing. So let's go ahead and get started here. We want to go ahead and wget the Hamclock systemd version. Okay, this is an older release, but it has the frame buffer versions. So it's Hamclock-systemd on GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and wget that. Get some Jeopardy waiting music. All right, let's see what we got it there. All right, let's go ahead and install that. I'm going to do this as root. I'm going to install this deb here. And I need my password. And we are installing the package. You know, this is I should have done this like on a Raspberry Pi 4 maybe. But that's more, those are expensive. I mean, a full-blown Raspberry Pi, that like the best one, just like $200. This is 25 bucks. So I'm saving money here for you guys, but it's not as fast as it could be. That's okay. We're just running Hamclock. It will actually compile the software at some point too, which is interesting on these other Pis. So there's some missing libraries that this older software wants that doesn't come with Trixie. I actually went out and found these here. This is going to give you the video frame buffer drivers that this likes to link with. And then we want to go ahead, and now that we've downloaded that, go ahead and install it. This is libraspberrypi 0 is the name of the library package. This is going to do the Broadcom video frame buffer libraries that this likes to use. Now keep in mind, this isn't Wayland, this isn't X11, this isn't a desktop, this isn't GNOME or KDE. We're not doing any of that. This is one application, and it's just going to write bits to a screen. So this is almost like a server. Think of this more like a server than a desktop, right? 'Cause that's really what it is. All right. Dependency problems. Okay, we got it. Let me see. What are we missing here? Depends on Raspberry Pi bootloader. Ignore all of this stuff, you know, because this came from an older operating system. We're going to get around that by going ahead, and we're going to uninstall that package, but leave the files behind. So I'm going to su-root. And now I am the root user, and I am going to tar up or back up all of those library files that it just made. That's them. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove that package that had the dependency errors on it. We don't care about the bootloader stuff. We really don't. All right, we just removed it, and now we're gonna use the tar command to restore the files from the package we just erased. You got that? All right, you're following along at home. Now I want you to edit the actual boot firmware config. Now, most people use Nano as an editor when you want to edit text from the command line. I don't have the cognitive capacity to do Nano, but I'm told it's really easy for first-time users. But I'm going to use VI. So wherever you see me use VI, use Nano, okay? I'm trying to remind us to do that. All right, we are going to VI. This is the boot time configuration. It includes all of the firmware and kind of like ROM-based drivers. We want to make a couple of quick changes here. Actually, there's just one. There's one called KMS. It's in here. Enable DRM v3D driver. We don't want to do that. We don't want any fancy drivers driving this display because we're going to use a raw frame buffer device. That's what this older software does. Now, newer stuff's going to use the KMS drivers for 3D acceleration and all that. In fact, DigiPi is starting to use that. That's why we got full speed HDMI over here for DigiPi. Don't get me started on DigiPi. All right, so this is done. I'm going to write that file out. Config.txt is now written out, and I am going to, it's commented out for the DT overlay. I'm going to go ahead and reboot the DigiPi, the Hamclock. You can see it. We just logged out. We can see DigiPi is feverishly rebooting right now. Or is it shutting down? No, it was shutting down. Now it's rebooting. I can pause you guys for this, unless you like watching Raspberry Pi's boot. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. So Linux kernel's coming up. We got udev and the init and the systemd sequencer all starting a bunch of services we generally don't need. Now remember, I did pre-configure Wi-Fi. I did pre-configure the Pi user. The password's Raspberry. Again, patrons who are just booting this image, if you want to know the login, it's going to be Raspberry. Also, for the first time, if you're just booting the image, run raspi-config as the root user. Run sudo raspi-config, and then go ahead and configure your home Wi-Fi, okay, for that. So we've rebooted now, and then the kernel KMS video driver is no longer keeping that device locked. And now anything can use the frame buffer without going through that driver, which is what we want here. All right, so there's some kludgy stuff here. I am going to go back to, I'm going to SSH back into the Pi that has been freshly rebooted. I've got the password cached, but it is Raspberry. Let's see where we're at. I'm going to become the root user again, sudo su root. This is just so we don't have to type sudo over and over. You just do, let me get the password right. Can't talk and type at the same time. Unless I'm saying what I'm typing. I don't know. Anyways, this, see how you get the pound prompt? Now I don't have to run sudo anymore. Okay, so that's a quick expert tip right there. And I need to put those new libraries that we just downloaded, installed, uninstalled, re-extracted. I gotta tell the system where those are. I'm gonna use fbset to set the console frame buffer to 32 bits per pixel because Hamclock insists on that. What else? There's a Hamclock FB00. Now we're going to actually run Hamclock. We're going to run it as the root user here, okay? See what happens. All right, just click anywhere for setup screen. I hope. I wonder if I should make this bigger. It's running for the first time. Click anywhere to skip setup. Now remember, this is a touch screen, right? Which is pretty cool. It's booting up. It's doing lots of Hamclock stuff. This will actually manage your Wi-Fi. I wouldn't count on that. Again, this is old software. Now, it should prompt us to upgrade to a newer version. It's going to say newer version 4.2.2 is available. This is a really old version of Hamclock, so we're waiting for the countdown here. 3, 2, 1. You want to update now? We're going to say yes. Okay. This is going to take a while, particularly on a Raspberry Pi 3A Plus. I'm going to pause you guys. You're just going to watch the software compile here. It's like watching paint dry, and ignore all the warnings. Now, hopefully, when this is done compiling, we will be updated to version 4.2.2, which is the minimum version required that has the -B switch that lets us draw our information, stream our data from ham radio or hamclock.com. So we need at least version 4.2.2. That's what it's recompiling and upgrading to right now, and I'll just pause you guys. Yeah, compiled and got all the way to a blank screen. there's progress. I did figure out, this actually took an embarrassing amount of time, that the frame buffer settings, it does not like it all. So we actually have to move the fbset command to fbset.off, so it can't find it and run it and lose its mind. So we're going to do just that. So we just moved fbset to fbset.off here. And now we are going to run the Hamclock and see what, actually no, we're going to create a service first. I've got, I want you to edit a file called hamclock.service. I'm not going to use nano. I don't understand. I'm going to use VI. You guys use nano. Okay, I put nano in the notes. I don't know. VI users. All right, so there's already a service file here. I'm just going to delete all of this here, and I'm going to paste this new service file here. This is like autoexec.bat. Remember that from DOS? This is one of the services that'll start as this boots. It's going to load the environment, load those new libraries that we got. It's actually going to run fbset that we had to rename, set the depth to 32, which Hamclock likes, and then it's going to run Hamclock with the frame buffer mode at 800 by 480. It has a few different frame buffer modes. This is 800 by 480. The T25 lowers our CPU usage. I think this goes back to the microcontroller days. This is the CPU percentage target that it's looking for. And then -B, this is the new thing, hamclock.com:80. Okay, this is our data feed here. This is the new one. Normally it would look for clear skies something, which no longer exists. And we're going to run this as root. Sleep for a little bit before we actually start this to make sure the system boots. All right, that's done. We've got the service built. I'm going to do systemctl daemon reload. That's going to rescan that file that we just created. And then I'm going to enable the service, enable Hamclock. So now when the system boots, it's going to go ahead and run that. And then if I want right now, I can actually, yeah, let's do it. We can actually start the newly compiled Hamclock. So we're going to actually start that service that we just defined. So systemctl start Hamclock. Again, we're going to put all this in the notes. I know I'm going pretty fast here. Let's see what happens. It's going to go through that 10-second wait period because I just want to make sure the system was booted. Now it says click anywhere to enter setup. Okay, cool. You guys see this? There it is. I wonder if I should make it a little bit bigger. All right, there it is, booting them up. We've got a new version, 4.22. That's the version that can draw on the new data source, hamclock.com:80. We can also change the screen buffer brightness. There is a new version, 4.25. I do want you to click, you can either hit no here and just go with this version and it'll probably be okay. But what I discovered is if you click yes, it does actually work. Now this is pulling down another version and recompiling it. This is 4.25, so I guess the folks at hamclock.com have decided to push this new version out. So yeah, you literally have to recompile this twice to get this to get this going. All right, so that's going to take a minute. I'll go ahead and pause you guys. All right, it compiled. It probably took about 5 minutes. I didn't want you to enter that. Click anywhere to enter setup. And this is version 4.25. It worked. You know, at least we didn't have to edit a bunch of stuff and go through compilation dependencies. The compilation process is pretty cool. It downloads all its dependencies and libraries and headers all by itself. So the default call sign is WB0OEW. That's the original author. I guess I should have entered setup here, but you can enter setup and enter your call sign. The mouse stuff is a little glitchy, I guess. I don't know. We can click here. We can change our colors. The one thing I like to do is select the composite. I don't know if that's going to work. The composite sun thing, I just think it looks cool. No. And you might want to get like a real mouse. If you plug in a real mouse, you can actually mouse with this yourself. I don't know how to edit a lot of the other stuff. Like I said, the setup stuff is a little weird. There's a bunch of DX spotting stuff. There are band conditions. Again, the solar thing. What I'd like to get is the solar flare index. Is that even possible? I don't know how this works, guys. Hamclock experts help me out. I would like to see the solar flare index on there at some point. Additionally, or the solar flare probability at a minimum. I don't know how to configure the rest of it. It does have like a setup screen. I should have clicked to enter setup there. So we're still on the Raspberry Pi. CD just takes you to your home directory. And if you CD into .hamclock, you're going to see a bunch of configuration stuff. I don't know how any of this stuff works, but it'd be cool to like be able to edit these files and change how you perceive the Hamclock. To restart Hamclock, you should just be able to do systemctl. I'm not going to restart. I'm going to do stop Hamclock. Let's see if it stops. Yeah, I notice the seconds are ticking. And then we're going to do start. Remember, there's a restart command too, but it wasn't working exactly right in my experience. There's some racing conditions there. I don't know, maybe we can get into the setup thing. So yeah, again, it waits 10 seconds before it starts, and then let's see if we can do the setup thing. Maybe I hit skip. I don't know. This is where the mouse stuff gets weird. You might need an actual mouse. So if someone understands how Hamclock works, help me with this part. Because I want to like, there was a page where you can like put in your call sign and stuff. I guess I didn't do that when it first ran. So I don't know. Maybe this newer version isn't prompting me for that. So anyways, we get the old call sign. But that's it. It's running. It's up and running. It would be cool to see in the comments how you guys use Hamclock. You know, maybe, I don't know, I'd like to see some more screenshots of how people use this. I think it's pretty cool looking. You know, you can set it on your desk here. You can make a battery powered version. In fact, you could put a USB backup battery on the bottom of one of these and use it that way. You could even take it into the field, you know, or get it so it runs on 12 volts, you know, for your DXpedition stuff. Or your POTUS and your summits on the air. And it's a nice, attractive conversation piece, I think. I mean, it looks good on the desk here. You know, maybe I'll leave it out when we're doing videos right next to the DigiPi. So we did it. We built a Hamclock. I don't know how to use it, but there it is. There's a Hamclock, a frame buffer Hamclock. Pretty cool. Yeah, I found a little one. This is a battery-powered version who got a 3B on the back and a cool little screen going on there. So a totally portable Hamclocks. Love it. All right, patreon.com/km6lyw. If you're a patron, I'm going to give you get access to this image that we just made. Otherwise, you know how to build one and maybe hopefully improve on the process that I just put together. And it's not the best process. It's not the worst process, but it does in fact work. So speaking of patrons, not only do these guys, all these awesome people over here make this channel ad free. I don't like ads. It also gets you access to all the software and artifacts of all the stuff we mess with here on the channel, including not only the SD card image for the Hamclock, but also the DigiPi SD card, which is an amateur radio data transceiver. You plug it into your radio and it kind of turns your radio into a local website, and it gives you access to all of the data modes that we talk about on this channel. It kind of helps you play along at home. So FT8, JS8 calls, a whole packet, APRS stuff, APRS messaging, mapping, all of those services are here on DigiPi, and patrons of the channel get access to this. I don't know, maybe I can show you some screenshots here. So these are all the modes that we support on DigiPi. Again, digipi.org if you want to take a peek at this. All the APRS modes, packet radio, AX.25 networking. We can do email. We can even, you know, ultimately do SMS texting and email. It's pretty cool all over amateur radio from anywhere in the world, because we can plug it into HF rigs. We've got a big one and a little one. Digipi.org, and there's some new features there. Check out the latest video on DigiPi 2.1. We've got a cool mapping feature that's an animated tactical map. It's kind of like having your own version of APRS.fi, completely offline, animated tactical mapping. We got APRS messaging, email. I don't know, we've got the new messaging client here somewhere. It's basically messaging works just like it does on your phone. We've got these cool clients now. It's a KISS TNC. Anyways, digipi.org. Go ahead and check it out. Again, patrons of the channel, really appreciate it, you guys. So, hey, my name is Craig. Amateur radio call sign KM6LYW. I'm in California and I'm clear.